Breaking news tonight as President Trump's aggressive trade policies send shockwaves through global markets and strain relationships with America's closest allies. The administration announced sweeping 100% tariffs on pharmaceutical imports, with the president declaring the United States will no longer be subsidizing foreign healthcare systems at the expense of American patients.
But starting today, the United States will no longer subsidize the health care of foreign countries, which is what we were doing. We're subsidizing others' health care. Countries where they paid a small fraction of what, for the same drug, that what we pay many, many times more for. And we'll no longer tolerate profiteering and price gouging from Big Pharma. But again, it was really the countries that forced Big Pharma to do things that, frankly, I'm not sure they really felt comfortable doing. But they've gotten away with it, these countries. European Union has been brutal.
These pharmaceutical tariffs emerge from months of Commerce Department investigations under Section 232 national security provisions.
Tariffs, 100% levies he's talking about that are due to go into effect next Wednesday. I think, though, the really important thing to note with this is that a lot of this seems to come out of these ongoing commerce investigations. So the Commerce Department, under the Trump administration, they've been spending months trying to slap these levies under the Section 232 rule. I think this is a bit different and actually might be more difficult to legally challenge than, say, those country-by-country tariffs that Trump also announced as part of his big Liberation Day plan. So what we've seen under these latest tariffs, this is the same type of sectoral process that he's used to advance levies on aluminum, steel, automobiles, auto parts, that kind of thing. So, we stand right there now, but I think we're waiting for the U.S. to wake up so that we can get a few more details on what exactly this is going to look like.
The legal framework makes these measures particularly difficult to challenge in court. Unlike country-specific tariffs that face more scrutiny, major drug makers, including AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson, have already begun preparing for this scenario, pledging billions in new U.S. manufacturing investments. The immediate market reaction has been severe. Japanese pharmaceutical stocks tumbled over 4% in early trading.
That's something a lot of producers and companies will be watching in this part of the world, and shares in pharmaceutical companies across Asia have actually been falling after that threat of 100% tariffs on imports of branded drugs from October 1. And that's unless their producers had already broken ground on US manufacturing plants. Now, markets had already been bracing for tariffs on pharmaceutical products. It's something that Trump had threatened in the past, but it's the companies with really big exposure to the US market that are likely to take a heavy hit. As I said, the ones that don't already have investments and manufacturing in the US. So, for example, one big Japanese pharmaceutical company, its shares tumbled 4.3%. And also a company in Australia called CSL also plummeted to a 6-year low on the stock market. But as we know, it's the uncertainty that's the real problem from these kinds of announcements. I mean, the trend has been that those tariffs will come down. That's what a lot of analysts are saying. But in the meantime, it's that uncertainty that can really weigh on share prices and cause the most damage.
Australian company CSL hit 6-year lows, while European pharmaceutical giants saw billions wiped from their market valuations. Companies without existing U.S. manufacturing facilities face the heaviest impact, with an October 1st deadline looming unless they break ground on American plants. Beyond pharmaceuticals, the administration's rhetoric has taken an increasingly provocative turn. During discussions about a new missile defense system called the Golden Dome, President Trump suggested that when Canada inquired about joining the defense program, they could become the 51st state to get it for free.
And Canada called me a couple of weeks ago. They want to be part of it. To which I said, well, why don't you just join our country? You become 51, become the 51st state, and you get it for free. So I don't know if that made a big impact, but it does make a lot of sense.
This comment has sparked outrage across Canada and embarrassment among some American officials. Louisiana's lieutenant governor publicly expressed his dismay, stating that many Americans share his embarrassment over these inappropriate remarks.
Well, we wanted to let him know, in spite of what our president has said and done, that we love Canadians. We have a great relationship. For me personally, it goes way back. I sold my company to PTI Services out of Edmonton and worked closely with the Canadians for many years and owe a lot of my success to that partnership. I was right at the front of the BP oil spill. The Canadian children sent letters and a box of pennies to save the Pelicans. So, and all that Canadians have done fighting forest fires in America, we've just been great friends for so long. It breaks my heart and embarrasses me what our president said about the 51st state. And I just wanted to let him know not everyone in America feels that way. As a matter of fact, I'd say the great many of us have the same feelings I do about those comments.
He candidly disagreed with the president's rhetoric and emphasized that not all Americans support such statements about their northern neighbor. The economic consequences are already materializing. Canadian citizens and travel agents have expressed deep anger, with many declaring they won't visit Louisiana or other American states until either an apology comes or the current administration leaves office. Louisiana, where their largest international tourism market, shows signs of significant strain.
Say, look, we love Louisiana, but we're not coming there until some said he apologizes or he's out of office. And I don't blame the Canadian people. I'd be mad too, but it runs deep, their anger. And we served Tabasco ice cream at the train stations, and the people couldn't have been nicer. But the same response from the people was their dislike for the president and his comments and the tariffs. But as I was welcomed by everyone, and just like we treat you in Louisiana, they treat you like family in Canada. And that's why I love the Canadian people. They're welcome, warm, and polite.
And talk to me about how important the Canadian visitors are in terms of the dollars that are spent, those tourist dollars. How important are they to your?
The lieutenant governor acknowledged that the full economic impact hasn't materialized yet, because Canadians typically book their trips far in advance. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Carney has been working to navigate these turbulent waters during his recent UK trip. His high-level conversation with President Trump comes at a critical moment, with the upcoming review of the Canada-United States-Mexico agreement.
All of this underscores is the importance of the upcoming review of CUSMA. A review, we're doing our consultations for that, as the Americans, as are the Mexicans, and there will be discussions that begin in a few months' time. And our objective is going to be obviously the best deal for Canada, but also to get ourselves in a position where there aren't these specific issues, important issues that are erupting, on an episodic basis, if I can put it that way.
Canada is set to review the agreement on its own in the coming months. The federal government launching public consultations to hear from communities, lawmakers, and industry leaders before a new agreement is negotiated with the U.S. and Mexico. In the more immediate lens, Carney says he spoke with U.S. President Donald Trump earlier this week in New York, that meeting coming around the same time Washington imposed tariffs on pharmaceutical goods.
We are, we're engaged with the U.S. In ongoing discussions on some of those specific strategic areas. Those conversations are ongoing. I had a higher level conversation with the president a few days ago.
The Prime Minister emphasized securing the best deal while avoiding episodic trade disputes that could destabilize both economies. The administration's protectionist measures extend beyond pharmaceuticals and rhetoric. New tariffs of 100% on movies made outside the United States are targeting foreign film industries, including Canada's lucrative production sector.
U.S. President Donald Trump keeps telling everyone how much he loves tariffs, but it's been a minute since he had new ones to debut. Today, though, he's coming after foreign film industries, including the one in this country, saying he'll slap 100% tariffs on movies made outside of the United States, something Ontario Premier Doug Ford quickly condemned.
Well, I disagree with anything that guy says. He drives me crazy. First of all, we built the movie business up to roughly about $3 billion. Our goal is to build it up to $5 billion. So we're going to continue growing, continue investing in the film industry.
Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand, meanwhile, addressed the United Nations this morning, laying out the Carney government's foreign policy priorities in light of a changing world. She spoke with us shortly after delivering her speech. Hi, Minister. Pleasure to welcome you back to the program. Thanks for making the time.
Thanks, Vashi.
Politico wrote this morning that after being in the room for Donald Trump's speech to the UN last night, that you recast the speech that you delivered this morning, which happened just minutes after Donald Trump announced yet another big round of tariffs. This time, 100%, he says, on movies made outside of the United States. Do you know how that will impact Canada?
Well, first, I just want to correct the record.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford quickly condemned the move, expressing frustration while emphasizing the province's commitment to growing its film industry from $3 billion to $5 billion despite these headwinds. The Canadian government has responded with support packages for affected industries. Jobs Minister Patty Hajdu announced a $400 million federal loan for Algoma Steel in Sault Ste. Marie, with Ontario contributing an additional $100 million. These measures aim to help Canadian steel producers facing the immediate impact of American protectionism.
Jobs Minister Patty Hajdu there announcing a $400 million relief loan for tariff-hit Algoma Steel. The Ontario government adding another $100 million for the Sault Ste. Marie company. The demand from sectors hit by Trump's tariffs is one of the reasons the Fed say their November budget will have a, quote, substantial deficit. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is not buying what they're selling. Take a listen.
Recently, Mr. Carney appointed a parliamentary budget officer, and that budget officer is commenting on Carney's spending and his deficits and said they are, quote, very alarming, stupefying, shocking, unsustainable. If you don't change, this is done. The 5-year horizon for deficits has now doubled under Carney versus what it was under Trudeau, so a more conservative-looking haircut, suit, and resume has not resulted in more conservative spending.
Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand has outlined Canada's broader strategy to diversify trade relationships beyond the United States. While 75 to 80% of Canada-US trade continues under existing agreements, she highlighted new partnerships with Indonesia, Mexico, and the European Union as essential for maintaining economic resilience in an era of increasing protectionism.
Any particular tariff measure that the United States is adopting, we are, of course, working for the benefit of the Canadian economy. One of the points in the speech that I made at the UN General Assembly today is, in fact, about our economic resilience at home. Canada is doubling down on our multilateral relationships, not only in defense and security, but also in areas of the economy, such as the WTO. We are forging new economic partnerships with partners. I cited the trade agreement with Indonesia last week, Mexico, and further efforts in the EU, for example. So this is all hands on deck for Canada in terms of defense and security, in terms of economic resilience, as well as, of course, standing up for our core values.
Let me drill down on that, because that's sort of a focus of the speech that you delivered, right? Here are the 3 planks of our foreign policy,
Yes.
as we put it forth. Defense and security, as you mentioned, the second, economic resilience, and the third, core values. I want to pick up on the economic resilience part, because you gave some examples in Mexico, Indonesia, and in Europe. Your opposition at this moment in time says that you're essentially conveying something that isn't true. That in Indonesia's case, for example, that deal was actually arrived at in November of 2024, before this prime minister took office. That in Mexico, there's not anything really tangible besides an agreement saying that you want to work together more. That even in Europe, CETA is largely in place, and that there's no sort of proof.
The political ramifications are equally significant. The Louisiana Lieutenant Governor's direct call for President Trump to apologize represents a rare break from party unity. He criticized the current climate where Republicans fear speaking out against the president due to potential primary challenges from far-right candidates. His advocacy for open primaries reflects a belief that officials should be able to respectfully disagree without facing punishment or threats from within their own party.
He needs to apologize. It was something off cuff that he shouldn't have said. And I send the same message to our Congress, our senators and congressmen. I like people to tell me when I make a mistake or do something wrong, and I'm a big boy. I can apologize and fix it and move forward. And but we need more people to speak out when they disagree. You should be able to disagree with the president respectfully and let him know what you feel without being punished or threatened. And so that's something we really need to fix in this country.
Well, the American ambassador to Canada has been on a little bit of a listening tour as well. And when faced with that same anger, that same offense that was taken by Canadians to the 51st state language, he in turn took offense, saying that his guy, as he said, hasn't made a comment like that in a very long time, and that Canadians should just...
In the technology sector, the administration announced a proposed deal regarding TikTok, with President Trump claiming Chinese President Xi gave approval for American ownership. The vice president emphasized protecting American data privacy while balancing national security concerns with keeping the popular platform operational.
So this is interesting because I had a very good talk with President Xi. A lot of respect for him. Hopefully he has a lot of respect for me too. And we talked about TikTok and other things, but we talked about TikTok, and he gave us the go-ahead. You know, it's run by American investors and American companies, great ones, great investors.
We wanted to keep TikTok operating, but we also wanted to make sure that we protected Americans' data privacy as required by law, both because it's the right thing to do, but also because it's a legal requirement of the law that was passed last year by Congress. So we think that we were able to do that. Of course, we're going to keep on working at it, but this deal really does mean that Americans can use TikTok, but actually use it with more confidence than they had in the past, because their data is going to be secure and it's not going to be used as a propaganda weapon against our fellow citizens.
As these trade tensions escalate, both the economic and diplomatic costs continue to mount. The question remains whether these aggressive policies will achieve their stated goals of bringing manufacturing back to America, or whether they will ultimately harm the interconnected North American economy that has benefited all parties for decades.